That was quick. What is going on, party people in the house? It is Wednesday night. And you know, if it's Wednesday night, you know what time it is. It's time for your Drunk Unk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, the Drunk Unk. And from the jump, I'm so excited about the show tonight and the subject matter. I couldn't even wait to have Catch in here. I'm going to have Catch. I'm going to have El Presidente. I got Tom G. How is my main man, Jeff Ketchum, doing this evening?
I'm good, man. For the first time in 3 days, I didn't debate Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith all day long. So, I got some work done today. I got some life stuff done today. And now I'm in a good mood. I'm ready to partake in a little drunk uncle action.
That is awesome. Well, listen, before we get too far down that road, this show is brought to you by Eric Sells Homes, DFW. If you're looking for a home in the DFW area, school is getting out this week. Listen, it is time for you to sell a home, whether it's time for you to buy a home. This is the time to do it. And my main man, El Presidente, he's got you covered. Eric Sells Homes, DFW. He's the man with the master plan. If you're looking to sell a home, buy a home in the DFW area, close to the DFW area, as long as you make it worth his while, I promise you, he'll take care of you. He will hook you up. He is an Orange Bloods guy. He is a drunk uncle contributor. I love him to death. So make sure you check out my man, Eric Sells Homes, DFW. Catch, by the way, I mentioned that. Is Friday the last day of school for the kids?
Tomorrow.
Oh,
my daughter's already passed out. She's ready. She's so ready. She's asleep.
But my kids are just already in summer mode. They're up. They don't give a damn. And I'm just like, Catch, can I tell you something? Because our kids used to go to the same school. Max, I was talking to Max this week. Max is in 4th grade. This is how ready his teachers are ready to get out of there. So far this week, they don't have desk or chairs. They're literally they're just sitting on the floor the entire week.
Do you know that they don't it's not Indian style anymore when you sit down with your legs folded? It's crisscross applesauce.
Yeah. No, there's no Indian reference anymore. That's our old 1970s, 80s stuff.
I didn't think that one was bad though, because I thought Indians actually inside, I thought they did sit like that. So
no, all those references have been canceled.
My kids had no idea what I was talking about.
Dude, my times have changed when I've been in the car and I gotta watch what I say, and I've said the word stupid. And they'd be like, Daddy, that's a bad word. I'm like, what? Like, Dad, that's you can't say stupid. So
yeah, that is a bad word.
It is.
Stop cussing, Anwar.
I was like, stupid's bad. And that's bad. I'm like, all right, I guess I can't say stupid anymore. So those things have changed. So catch. Our debate, which started on Sunday, it's interesting, Catch, because I was thinking about it today. And you and I we've had off-season debates. We've had the Andrew Beck debate of kind of is he good or not, right? It was always innocuous on one word. We had the Zach Shackelford debate, and Zach Shackelford, I remember, was just if he's good, right? That's literally what we debated for 6 months. The word good, right? I feel like it was longer than that. We had our Brendan Eagles versus Caden Stearns debate. We had Casey Thompson versus Hudson Card. And this is the first time that you and I had a non-Longhorn debate that had lasted for days, And I think you and I finally hit a point where look, there's other things to do in life. We're not going to keep going back and forth. We're not going to change each other's opinion. But I was thinking today, Catch, I was like, you know what? I would love to go through some history of some of the great Longhorn debates that people have had throughout the years. And one of the things I wanted to have was you on here, because I think you can provide us with the historical perspective. And I'm not necessarily saying we need to revisit the debates and have a debate show tonight, but I also wanted to kind of talk about it because I think these are some fascinating topics that since I've been here on Orange Bloods, I have seen some of these heated debates going back and forth that have never been solved. Catch, when I put a thread on Orange Bloods asking folks for just to get pointers, people were still debating all day today, like cursing each other out, right?
Yeah, you're like, we're not necessarily going to relitigate these things, but let's relitigate them.
And then it went from there, right? So what I want to do is for our setup is I want to bring in Tom G. I want to bring in El Presidente because I want there to be our fan base, right? And I want them to be the guys that we can lean on after this. So what I want to do, Catch, is I want to kind of start off, but I want to set up tell you the debate. And I want you just to set it up for us to give us an idea of like what was going on in the times. Give me your overall opinion on it. Then at some point we'll get to Tom G and El Presidente and see what they think. But I have several topics that I want to get to tonight. And I want to start with the biggest one, which is Sims versus Applewhite, right? And the great Longhorn debate. I just want to jump into it.
There will be no other debate tonight. It'll be 18 straight hours of Sims and Applewhite.
All right, give me the breakdown, give me the lowdown. I know Chris Sims from when he came to Tampa and I covered him there. Everything else predates me. So I want to sit back, relax, have some drinks, and have you set it up for us.
The crazy thing is the dynamics it's not apples to apples, but it might be like apples to grapes. There are some similarities to Applewhite Sims and Ewers Manning. Okay. But let me set it up a little bit. Major Applewhite wasn't supposed to be a thing. Like that happened unexpectedly. He was an afterthought in the 1997 recruiting class. John Malkovich at the time picked him over Drew Brees after evaluating both guys during summer camp. And Brees goes on to have this huge senior year, but the decision was made. Applewhite was going to be the quarterback in the class. And then Malkovich gets fired. And, when Mac Brown shows up, Major Applewhite is sitting 1 year later when he takes over. Applewhite's part of the deal. But Richard Walton was the starting quarterback going into 1998. He had waited like 4 or 5 years. Like he was a senior. James Brown finally graduates and departs. It's Richard Walton's team. And then Richard Walton gets hurt and Major Applewhite takes over. And Major Applewhite ends up being a real sensation, really. He quarterbacks the team all the way through 1998, the 98 season, which was – they had a parade for that team, Anwar, and they did not win the Big 12 championship. They won the Cotton Bowl. Ricky wins the Heisman. That team got a parade. And Major Applewhite was the quarterback for that team. He took that team into Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, when Nebraska was on the verge of playing for a national championship. And Major Applewhite not only quarterbacks that team to a victory, but he basically nearly got knocked unconscious at the end of it, but wouldn't come off the field. He very quickly becomes a thing imagine Quinn Ewers' mullet, but Major Applewhite's mullet was he had won some really important games. But at the same time, they recruited Chris Sims. Chris Sims was not just the number one player in the country. He was Arch Manning before Arch Manning. Mm-hmm. People didn't know recruits back then, but everybody across the country knew that Texas had signed Chris Sims. So when Chris Sims shows up, it's not too different from kind of what this first season is with Arch Manning. Major's the returning starting quarterback. They weren't necessarily looking to play Chris Sims right away. Redshirt wasn't really on the table, but Major Applewhite was your starting quarterback.
Okay.
The issue was everything that Mac Brown and his staff did from that moment, from a recruiting standpoint, was Chris Sims is our future. He's going to be the guy that returns Texas to national prominence. We're going to win a national championship with Chris Sims. But Major Applewhite was really good. But Major Applewhite wasn't great. Major Applewhite had limitations. And when he would play teams with a lot of speed, the Kansas States of the world back then, when they were so much better than this Kansas State team that just won the conference championship. And forgive me, my dogs are about to go really crazy because my wife's about to come home.
That's okay.
It sounds like World War III of dogs is about to happen. Just know that it will stop in like 10 seconds. Eventually, Major Applewhite tears his ACL, and it opens the door for Chris Sims to take over. But Chris Sims taking over is a little bit like Quinn Ewers last year. It did not come off without a hitch. There were interceptions. There were bad interceptions. So there were a lot of people who were like, when Major gets healthy, put his ass back in. He's better than Chris Sims. But the thought process was Chris Sims' ceiling was so much higher than Major Applewhite's. And look, to be fair, one of those guys ended up being a starting quarterback for a playoff team in the NFL, and the other guy never played in the NFL. So the idea that Chris Sims' upside was higher was the truth. He was a future NFL quarterback, and that's just not what Major Applewhite was ever going to be. The problem is Chris Sims didn't really get really good until his last season at Texas in 2002. In 2001 and 2000, there was some serious Applewhite and Sims crossover, and that debate of who should be the starting quarterback didn't stop for 2 years. And there were some ugly elements in it, and that Sims led the Longhorns to the 2001 Big 12 championship game, but really shit the bed really bad. Like, he had a meltdown. Mac Brown didn't step in fast enough to save Chris Sims. The Texas Stadium crowd booed the crap out of Chris Sims that night. After the game's over, people were flooding his phone with spam and voicemails and anger. His nickname was Limo because, unfortunately for him, the day that he showed up on campus, his mom, I think it was his mom, didn't have a rental car. So they dropped him off on campus in a limousine. And like, it just was an unbelievable time in Texas football history. And there's never been anything like it. Nothing that we think we've ever seen in the 20 years since has ever compared to really in 2001 and 2000, or excuse me, in 2000 and 2001, peaking with the Big 12 championship game and the final game of the 2001 season, the Holiday Bowl. Sims had another sketchy performance. At one point, Chance Mock was caught on the sidelines laughing. And so there was this controversy of, was Chance Mock laughing at Chris Sims? They end up putting Major Applewhite in the game, his final game as a college player. He brings the team all the way back, almost like what he did in the Big 12 championship game. And Applewhite fans will look at what happened in both the Big 12 championship game and the Holiday Bowl and forever believe that he should have been playing the entire time. And it's a really complicated conversation, even 20 years later.
All right, so El Presidente, I'm going to start with you as a fan. I want to get your take as a fan. Did you lean either direction as far as Sims or Applewhite is concerned?
Well, golly, Catch, you really, I mean, you painted the picture right there, because I'm starting to remember those moments, and I'm like, that son of a bitch, and I'm starting to get emotional again because, I mean, holy sweet. I remember being at that Big 12 championship game at the old Texas Stadium. And Catch, if you remember, no beer was allowed. No alcohol sales were ever allowed at a Big 12 game. And this was the first one. Yep. And then we had the upset a couple hours before with Tennessee and Miami, or I forgot the teams involved. All Texas had to do was win, and they're going to the Rose Bowl.
On where they beat Colorado earlier that year, like 42-17 or something like that. I can't remember the exact score. It was a pretty epic beatdown. What I remember about that game is that Texas was winning like 42-17 in the fourth quarter, and there was a guy in Section 8 that was cursing Chris Sims out on a day when they were winning by 4 touchdowns. So the rematch against Colorado was a layup. The thought was it would be a coronation for the whole Mac Brown experience. And El Presidente is right. Just before the game, Tennessee, I think, is the team that loses in the SEC championship. The Big 12 championship game was prime time, 7 o'clock start, if I'm not mistaken. And everybody inside Texas Stadium was turned around and watching TVs in the suites, because that loss goes down, and suddenly all Texas has to do is beat Colorado that night, and they're playing for a national championship against Miami in Mac Brown's 4th season. And the dream that had been sold would have come to fruition. That night is remembered for a lot of things, most of them terrible.
Terrible. I've never seen a more hostile crowd when he threw that last interception. And I'm sitting up at the top of Texas Stadium. And the old Texas Stadium, there's the lower level and the upper level. And beers were coming from the top level down. That's how disgusted people were. And I've never seen, I was like, he's not going to get out of here alive, and then the ultimate comeback happens, and that first touchdown, then that second touchdown. Now I remember Applewhite turning to the Colorado side, and he gave that, I'm here. It's on me now. And, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, because, it was such a great, like I said, I was Team Applewhite. I remember when Richard Walton got hurt in the Rose Bowl, and Applewhite came in. They didn't win that day, but we were coming off Route 55 the year before, and I'm like, oh
66.
No. Yeah, Route 56. Sorry, and here we go again. You know what I'm saying? And I thought then he had that spark that the team needed, and he went into Nebraska. And, I know that was a Ricky Williams show, but he stood in there and took some just hellacious hits from that black shirt defense. I always thought he was an ultimate warrior. I really did.
Tom G, were you on the Applewhite or Sim side of this thing?
Oh, I was Team Applewhite all along. I mean, he was just coming off, was it Big 12 Freshman of the Year the prior year. He was in 99.
He was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, exactly. And he still, to this day, has like 19 or so UT quarterback records. Still, I thought he was so heady. While he didn't have the physical tools, I thought he was a gritty, heady quarterback. Especially some of those games like against Nebraska and stuff. I mean, God, bring back the Colorado game. It's like I remember like it was yesterday. Because that's the game that Cedric Benson went down also, which even put more pressure on Sims, and he freaking choked away. And then Applewhite did all his Superman heroics, and we run into the kicker. When we were going to get the ball back with a chance to win the damn game, we run into the kicker, and Colorado keeps the ball. Oh my God! Yeah. Thanks for bringing that one back up.
Now, onward. Can I acknowledge the elephant in the room?
Go for it.
Applewhite was a real hot and cold player. And it's really easy to remember he had some truly great moments, but he sucked in and there were games when he absolutely sucked. And more than Texas fans who want to remember him as kind of Johnny Appleseed, like reborn, or Paul Bunyan, or like whatever kind of mythic, hyperbole-filled, like almost action hero that you want to create. He was really poor in too many games. So many that I was a Sims guy because I always felt like Major was never really going to get you above 9-3. There were just too many games where he wasn't good. The problem is Sims was not ready, and it took Sims a long time before he was truly ready. So the idea was you're going to bump your ceiling. I think Onward's got to like reset his internet. He'll be back, but you guys will continue the conversation. The problem was they handed the car keys over to Sims with the idea being we're going to play through the tough stuff and we'll come out on it on the other side. At some point, that move will pay off. It didn't pay off until his senior year when he really started to turn. You think back to the Sims game at Kansas State where he pops his finger back into place.
Yeah.
They win that game. They won at Nebraska that year. They beat LSU in the Cotton Bowl. Like Chris Sims finally became a pretty damn good player before he left. But he wasn't damn good in either 2000 or 2001. And so they were damned if they did and damned if they didn't, because Major was never going to be what Texas needed him to be. But Sims wasn't ready to be what he needed them to be. And so what you had was 1 week from the next, you really didn't know what you were going to get from either of them. And, I think Major never totally got back. He was already slow-footed before suddenly he's got a rebuilt leg. And it just was such an awkward time. And the thing is, nobody could look at that situation from 30,000 feet at the time. We were all in the weeds. It was hand-to-hand combat. And now we've got so much time to reflect on it that it seems so obvious, right? And if we could have, it feels like we could talk this situation out with some grace in 2023. Whereas, Tom, there was no grace in 2000 and 2001. Nobody had time for grace. It was pick your guy, grab your weapon, and let's get after it.
Well, I also think, Applewhite led us to some just amazing wins, especially the one at Nebraska. There were some memorable wins that he had for us. I was just looking at his record book. When he left, he had 45 UT quarterback records. That's phenomenal. Yeah.
Catch, do you remember the LSU Cotton Bowl game?
Of course.
Remember how cold that day was? It was a real cold day.
Roy Williams, if I remember right, when he went off on that long one.
Yeah.
Down the seam. Yeah.
Do you think that was his best performance as a Longhorn? Was that what he was supposed to be year one? And Ewers had that moment in the Cotton Bowl this year versus OU. And I feel like it's kind of like the same thing. We're all looking at Ewers the same way. You know what I mean? Like, this guy has that number one billing. Arch has that number one billing, but it takes a little time for the roast to get cooked. Do we feel like we went through the 1 year of trouble and now year two is going to be Ewers' year?
I think the thing about Sims is that he got good and then he left. Yeah. And if he has one more year left and you're like, oh, he's coming off of that 2002 Cotton Bowl game, and then he's a senior, and he's the quarterback of that 03 team, which only needed a quarterback. Yep. I mean, that was Chance Mock and Vince Young trying to figure it out because that neither one was where Chris Sims had been. If Sims redshirts in 99, they allow him to redshirt. And look, Applewhite was a guy that got hurt quite a bit. Sims had to start that game in A&M in Kyle Field, the bonfire game. And boy, he went into the line, and there was a lot about that 99 game. There was the food poisoning that went on, but the bottom line is, if Sims is allowed to play 4 games in redshirt, he probably maintains his red. They probably at that point are able to plan around that, and he probably plays a couple of times early in the season, and then they hold on, and maybe they play him late in the year, but he's able to redshirt. Then he gets to be a senior in 2003, and I think we remember Sims's career completely different. And I think there's less pressure to put him on the field at that point because the clock was ticking on his eligibility. And if you wait until 2002 to play him, you've got it's what I'm talking about with Arch Manning. Yeah. You wait 3 years? And back then, they did waste it. So it wasn't like you wait 3 years and you've got 2. That's not what happened. With Ewers, the parallel is Sims and Arch are very similar, and you can only wait so long before you have to get that guy on the field. And just like Major was good, Ewers is good. Like, I don't think Ewers is bad. I think he's average-ish to good. And on his best days, I think on Ewers' worst days, he's still kind of average. Although he's had maybe statistically some terrible games. I think that it will be interesting to see how long it takes Ewers to be so good that he can do the things that he wants to do. I feel like that where Ewers and Sims, more so than Applewhite, remind me of each other because he's also a number 1 overall quarterback, is sometimes these guys aren't ready to be good when we demand them to be good. Ewers is this weird combination of Major and Sims. He comes with the Sims expectations, but he's got the guy over his shoulder a little bit like Ewers does. It makes that situation really unique.
All right, so let me read the super chat, and that's good. I got definitely a bunch of other topics I want to get into. So Julian, it's more of a statement than it is than in a question, but he says Applewhite got screwed, and don't worry about how that signed helmet in my room impacts this. If Applewhite was allowed to play his senior year, he would have played in the NFL, signed with the Packs, asked to be released. So, lots of things for you, Julian. I know that's been up on the screen for a little bit. Catch, let's start with another one, right? This is another.
That is almost the most shocking thing I've seen. I saw somebody earlier today or yesterday tell me that the Cowboys could have had Blair Thomas at running back and that they still would have won 3 Super Bowls, suggesting that Applewhite would have been an NFL quarterback is almost in line with that.
So here's another one. In one of our posters, it was ICC-NS, right? And this is a classic debate. If Colt doesn't get hurt against Alabama, Texas wins that game. Catch. Let me throw that up to you like J Kidd. The Colt doesn't get hurt against Alabama in that national championship game.
I think Texas blows Alabama out that night. And I don't think that happens if they play 10 times. But being in the Rose Bowl that night, Texas swarmed Alabama in the first 5 to 10 minutes of that game. Swarmed them like bees. And they're cashing in for a touchdown away from being up 2 scores. And if Applewhite doesn't get hurt, I just think they blow out Alabama that night. Alabama was quarterbacked by
McElroy.
Yeah, Greg McElroy, who was legitimately, I don't know how terrible, like what he was Chernobyl bad in that game. Go back and look at Greg McElroy's stats from that game. It was hideous. It's hideous. And they would not have been able to keep up with Texas on a night when Jordan Shipley was eating anybody's lunch he wanted to. And if he's got Colt throwing him the ball, he would have already had a bigger game than he already did against that Alabama. Look, I don't even know that Texas was better than Alabama. I don't. But that night, they were going to kick Alabama's ass. And I don't say that very often. I don't do the what if thing I was in the stadium, and it was the opposite of the Big 12 championship game in 2001. Instead of it feeling like there was a hellstorm of negativity, it felt like the excitement level in the Texas crowd in the sideline was as good as I've almost ever seen it. And that you'll never forget the feeling of what it felt like to see McCoy walk off the field. It was like, oh, he's going to come back, right? Surely he's going to come back, right? Like Gilbert will be okay for a series or two, and McCoy will come back and everything will be okay. Before that injury happens, it was ass kicking in the making, and that injury. And look, like Alabama last year, they knocked him out. That's part of the game. But if that doesn't happen, I believe that Texas wins that game, and then the spectrum of Texas history changes quite a bit from there.
Tanji, El Presidente, real quickly, were either of you guys at that game?
I was at that game that night. I parked there's no parking at the Rose Bowl, so there's a golf course right next to the Rose Bowl, you park on the dadgum greens. And I remember, and I'll be real quick, Ketch is right. Stadium was electric. We were kicking their ass in the first 10 minutes. And if Ketch remembers, they tried to fake punt it on us real early in the game.
Yeah, the first
in our sidelines, and we get it. And I'm like, and then McCoy gets hurt right after that. And it was like, I looked there, and I'm sitting right behind Texas's bench about 30 rows up. And it's like, why is Sherrod Harris getting warmed up? What is going on? I mean, I really didn't put together all the pieces of what was going on. And it was like, oh God, he ain't coming back. But I do believe 100% Ketch is right. You can quote me on that. Ketch is 100% right, not 85% right, 100% right. Texas would have kicked Alabama's ass. Greg McElroy, he was a bus driver. He was handing the ball off to a great running back, and he had a great wide receiver. But that night, Muschamp had the defense locked in, and they just got tired. At the end of the day, they got tired, and the offense wasn't there to help them.
What about you, Tom G? You were there.
Oh man, we are so much aligned. They did try the fake punt early on. Get in, intercepts it when they go for it, right? Then it was like the 10, 11 minute mark left in the first quarter. We're on, I think they're on the 10, 11, 12 yard line. I remember we just ran off like a 15 yard run with Newton. And then like a play or two later, bam, Colts hit, and that's it. And I remember it felt like all the air went out of the stadium. And then Mac started making some stupid decisions with some of the game calling that was going on. If you remember, right before half, we tried the shovel pass that went back for a touchdown, right? I mean, it's like, oh my God, come on, what are we doing? You're bringing up some painful memories.
But, you remember it was like the offensive coordinator, all he would call was these shuttle pass, not shuttle passes, but these quick tunnel screens.
Exactly.
wouldn't
Alabama's
trust
ready for that
Gilbert.
shit.
Yeah, he wouldn't trust Gilbert to go downfield at all. I mean,
No.
at all.
And then the second half came around, and Texas got it to within a field goal with, I want to say, 3 minutes or something left, but we could not close the deal. That's when he got sacked, fumbled. Alabama gets separation. It's a 10-point game, and then it just was over. So.
Yep.
The funny thing about that, Anwar, is that Texas gets the ball back, like the fellas say, with about, I don't remember the time. I mean, at this point, the specifics of the time aren't crystal clear to me, but Gilbert was a lot. I led the Garrett Gilbert brigade, but as he walks on the field down by 3 with about 3 minutes and change to go, it felt like, here we go.
Yeah.
The next great quarterback at Texas, it's the beginning of a new era as they're closing the McCoy era. And it just, Alabama's defense was better at that point than that Texas offense was with Gilbert on the field. The other element of that was Texas didn't properly prepare Garrett Gilbert to play in a game all season long. There was a lot of thought that Texas, before that game started, that if they had needed Gilbert at any point that season, they hadn't given him enough reps. Even when Texas was ahead in games by a lot, they weren't getting him prepared. So when he has to play in that game, the couch quarterback at that moment knew, God, if this is what we were talking about, like this was part of the conversation taking place all year long. When that moment happens in that game, it was, there were times when Matt Brown kind of committed occasional coaching malpractice. We mentioned it in that 2001 Big 12 championship game. Really, he was the problem in that game. He would not save Chris Sims from himself. He left that kid hanging out to dry when everybody knew, okay, put your veteran in. Sims doesn't have it. And if he makes that decision one series earlier than he does, Texas plays for the national championship in 2001. I think Matt Brown's a Hall of Fame coach, but in a couple of these things that we're talking about, you do go back and think, boy, if Mac had just done this or Mac had just done that, and they're two pretty major what ifs in the history of the program.
So ironic. So on our one closing soundbite, I will, in my opinion, as unprepared as Gilbert was, I think that was his best game as a Longhorn the rest of his career.
The second half on was great. He was very timid in the beginning, but it was the offensive.
I remember him coming back to start the following year. Yep. We thought he was the second coming, and it just never materialized.
5 and 7.
Okay.
So sustain with the theme of the what ifs, right? And what ifs it could have been. But this is a great debate, right?
I mean, sure, but I feel like we're gonna have to check on some people in the chat before.
That's all right. That's all right. We only got one more what if, and then we're gonna go into some more hypotheticals. So this is the only, I would say, the last painful one. Okay.
No, I don't know if they can take it.
They're okay. They're okay. They're hanging in there. It's drunk uncle. Everyone's got a drink. So the only person who's in jeopardy right now are the dogs, and right now, hopefully the wives are sleeping. So
hey, one more real quick, just to put a ribbon and bow on. The other thing I remember that night from the Rose Bowl, the Alabama game, was that I was in line for a drink in the concessions, and the actor Michael Duncan Clark was there.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
For those that don't, he was the guy in the Green Mile, the big guy.
Passed away.
Yeah.
He was not only a massive Texas fan, but in line, he told me he was an Orange Blood subscriber.
Oh, wow.
And we ended up sitting 2 rows away from each other. So it was throughout the game, I'm turning around and it was impossible not to put my eyes on Michael Duncan Clark because I didn't know he was a Longhorn fan. I didn't know he was on Orange Bloods. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is cool really that's really cool. How long have you been the owner? I mean, how long has your site been up?
2001.
That's just what an awesome story right there.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the last painful one, Catch, but it's a hypothetical, but it's debate. It was on our thread on Orange Bloods. I thought it was a good one. If Blake Gideon gets that interception against Tech, does UT play eventually against Florida in the national championship game?
I mean, yeah, they'd have been undefeated.
Yeah, I don't even think that's a debate.
The question is, would they have beaten Florida?
If you want to go that step further.
I think so, but like that's a coin flip game. Florida was really good. I mean, they beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma that year was really good. But yeah, I mean, if Gideon holds on to that pass, if they win that game in Lubbock, I mean, they're going to win. They win. You know, the Big 12 championship game wasn't a game. That was an Oklahoma coronation, and that would have been a Texas coronation. That Texas, the 2008 Texas team was better than the 2009 Texas team that I think beats Alabama in the Rose Bowl. And look, I don't look at last year's Alabama game just so that anybody watching this is like, Catch the homer, thinks that Texas wins all these games. I don't look at last year's game and think if Ewers plays all 4 quarters, Texas automatically wins. I mean, they may have, maybe, probably, but I figure I feel like Alabama makes some adjustments, and I think that I don't know how that game looks if that never happens. So, you know, 2 Alabama games back to back. There's one I think they definitely kick Alabama's ass. Last year's game, I think I'm in the minority when it comes. I think most people think Texas is just going to blow Alabama out, or they definitely win. I don't play the what if game with that one. I don't know. But with the 08 team, that was a pretty spectacular team that played a lot of big games, and the only one they came up short with was in that game in Lubbock. And that game itself is a nightmare to recall because Texas, as close as that game was and as good as Texas Tech was, it was a top 10 Tech team. Texas fell behind early. All of the good players on the Texas team. Jordan Shipley dropped a pass in that game that I've never seen him drop. I mean, it was just one of those games where if Texas shows up and plays a B-plus game, I think they win that game by double digits. They kind of played a C-plus game for a half and maybe a B- to B-plus game in the second half. And in the end, that wasn't good enough.
We scored too quick too. We scored at the very end.
Yeah,
we should have had better time management. You know how like these players slide right now, and we were going to score, and it was like they were over there. Let them score. We're going to go down and win the game, and it was a nightmare of a night. Anything that could have gone wrong. It's Lubbock. It's very similar to this year's damn game, Lubbock game. Anything that could have gone wrong, it went wrong. Mingus come back, and then we lose in overtime.
Great point.
But that's on Mac.
Yeah.
We were going in for the winning touchdown, and Mac's time management. We're sitting there running with 28 seconds, 25 seconds left on the clock, and we're inside the 5-yard line. Just stupid ass coaching decisions right there.
And ironically, on where I always felt like Matt Brown, one of the things that made him a really good coach on game days was really good at clock management and just game management. Ironically, in one of the biggest games of his life, that section of his coaching abilities failed him in ways that 9 out of 10 times Mac handles that correctly. Mm-hmm. It was a bad time for the one time to show up.
All right, so Catch. This one's only going to be for you, because you're the only one that knows the answer to this question. Oh, but it's a great Longhorn debate. It's fight night. Look, I wore this shirt on purpose because it's fight night, and the people will fight you to this day, Catch, on this one particular topic. Was Nick Saban really ever coming to the Longhorns?
I don't know, but let me set the stage for you.
Okay.
On the night of the Red Banquet, it's a Friday, Mac has literally been avoiding coming back to Austin for a week because he knew that he was talking about clock management. He knew that this Saban thing had a clock running. And the whole idea was Mac was trying to run clock. Saban's agent. So the thing that I can't speak with specifically is I don't know how Nick Saban truly felt. I know what was going on with his agent. His agent is communicating with Texas people. What the hell are you guys doing? We're ready to go. Nick's ready. And the Friday that Matt comes back, he's going to meet with Steve Patterson, who was just named the AD. I can't remember who else. There was like a couple of Board of Regents, I think. Steve Hicks might have been in the room. I want to say school president was in the room. And the whole point was they were going to tell Mac, you got to hang him up. It's time. But Mac didn't want to hang him up. And he didn't want Nick Saban replacing him more than anything. So somehow they come out of that meeting. And Mac has convinced, like Mac, they had the balls to do it. So the meeting is over and a Board of Regent member calls Sexton and says, we got no resolution. And Sexton, the quote I heard, and I can't say that Jimmy Sexton said this, I'm just telling you what I was told, was that Jimmy Sexton was like, what the fuck does this guy have on you guys? You guys can't. Nick Saban is ready to come to Texas. What is making this hard for you guys? So that night is the team banquet. And Texas couldn't tell Jimmy Sexton. They couldn't give him an answer. So Mac Brown gets up to the podium and he basically says, I'm coming back next year. We're running it back. And everybody's like, and then it happens. Kirk Herbstreit breaks the news that Nick Saban has signed his extension at Alabama, a contract that had been sitting on his desk for months. Unsigned, hadn't touched it, hadn't bothered with it. The feeling was out of spite that Nick Saban signed that contract that night and gave the news to Kirk Herbstreit because Herbstreit could break that news and it would be national. And it was. Yes. Because in the middle of the banquet, people were finding out on their phone while Mac is talking that Saban thing ain't happening. And it got ugly and dirty. The question is, if Texas fires Mac Brown 24 hours earlier than it did, because it happens the next day, then push comes to shove, does Saban take the job? We'll never know because Texas never put it in front. But at the time, Jimmy Sexton was communicating to Texas officials that Saban was lined up, ready to go. We'll never know. We will never know unless Nick Saban, after he's done with Alabama, fully comes clean on what was going on in that situation, which he's never really done.
But because you were there, you're part of the coverage of it, right? So whether he admits it or not, look, Catch, I always say it like this. There's a lot of people, if it's about admitting something that I did, there would be nobody in jail or prison because everybody would just say not guilty, right? Sometimes the facts are the things that you need, and that the facts speak more so than anything else. But through your coverage of that, and again, I'm not trying to do anything that gets Orange Blood sued, Jesus, but I'm not trying to do anything that gets Orange Blood, inside joke, Horrible inside joke, unfortunately. I'm not trying to do anything against Art Monsoon, but from what you've gathered, you felt the time the with inside the reporting of that, you guys felt like he was ready to come. Is that safe to say? Safe.
Yes.
Catch, I got a question.
That deal had been worked on for a long time. So it wasn't like they needed to recruit Saban. Saban was recruited. They only needed the job to come open. And Nick Saban clearly, look, it's circumstantial evidence, but what happens with that signed contract and how it's released and what it was a middle finger to Texas for stringing him along. And, you know, there was a lot going on with terms of the way Alabama had been paying him. Texas was backing up the Brinks truck. They were going to help him with what had been some reported debt issues that, like, there were millions of dollars involved in this that go back in terms of, like, it's Alabama and Saban history. Texas is going to make that right for him in ways that at the time Alabama hadn't stepped up and made right. And they pussyfooted around too much. And you know, it probably is the thing that's as responsible for the last decade of Longhorn failure as anything else, because that doesn't happen if Nick Saban is your head coach. Texas is winning a national championship in the last decade if Nick Saban takes the job in 2013.
Were you going to ask El Presidente before?
No, I think he covered it. You know, it's just, it goes back to that administration that we had then. And if you had this administration that we had now, that deal would have been signed, sealed, and done compared to, I think Powers was the president.
Ultimately, Powers did not make the alpha male move that, quite frankly, the Texas leadership of today would make.
You know, and there's Powers at the banquet. And I remember this tidbit being on national television telling Mac and Sally, I love you. And it was just like, how the hell are you going to fire them? And then you're telling them you love them in the middle of the banquet. And then all that happens.
All right. So, Jeff,
it's not the history of Orange Bloods.
Jeff, let's do two more. Okay? And these two are going to be recent over the last 2 seasons, okay?
Okay.
So here's another one. I thought someone brought out, and this is interesting because this is a UNI debate for 8 months. Was there actually a winner between the Hudson Cards, Casey Thompson debate? Because that was a huge debate all off season. UNI, not only UNI, but it was an Orange Bloods debate. And anytime you posted something or I posted something or there was a Hudson Card is doing this or Casey Thompson's doing this, so on and so forth. Hudson starts off as a starting quarterback. Casey comes in eventually. And at the end of the day, that was a huge debate, Catch. I think you and I can agree that consumed a lot more of our time than you and I probably ever anticipated throwing into it. But at the end of the day, is there a winner in that debate, or is that still to be determined?
Well, no, I think that there are really two. The big debate that year was who was going to be the starter to open the season. And I was of the opinion that Hudson Card was going to be the starter and that there was really nothing that Casey Thompson could do about that. That's what happened. The issue of there's a separate question of who was actually the better quarterback in 2021. And Hudson Card wasn't ready for prime time yet. And Casey Thompson was a little more ready for prime time in retrospect. So I think the answer to the debate of the original debate was who was going to be the starter. And I never once gave Casey Thompson a 1% chance. Like, I was pretty emphatic that entire offseason that it would be Hudson Card. A separate issue becomes who was the better quarterback. I think Sarkisian mishandled that in a pretty epic way, and he quit on Hudson Card in a way that was pretty unfair and kind of dumb, in my opinion. Like, I don't know why you make that guy the starting quarterback if the very first time he struggles at all in a game, you give up on him and send him to Siberia and never can trust him again. If you feel that way, then Casey should have been the starter from the very beginning, because just like Quinn Ewers a year ago, where I spend the entire season talking about, guys, there are going to be some growing pains in this. I know he looks like Paul Bunyan against Oklahoma, and he was sensational, but like there will still be some hiccups. There's always going to be hiccups when you play a young quarterback. It's part of the process. That Sark didn't know that with Hudson Card, it's one of his big early failures as a coach. And look, it probably opens the door for him to get Quinn Ewers. So it probably turns into a net positive. But in real time, I thought it was a massive mishandling of personnel.
Tom G., where were you in the Casey versus Hudson kind of debate going into that season? I think, are you on mute?
I am, sorry.
Okay.
I was on Team Card. I felt that just the overall arm talent and everything else, and he was plenty athletic enough, being playing some wide receiver and stuff in high school. I thought he just needed seasoning. Matter of fact, I agree with Jeff the whole way. I thought it was just Sark just like screwed the pooch how he handled the whole situation with Card. He didn't give him a chance to fail, learn, anything. I mean, he just it was. What's interesting is I firmly believe Card is going to ball out at Purdue, and eventually he'll be a day 2 draft pick. No,
day 2. You're saying second or third round.
Oh yeah,
by saying that.
I think absolutely.
In the NFL draft or the XFL draft?
NFL draft. When he decides to come out, he'll be a day 2 pick.
Oh Jesus! You want to talk about bad beats? That's a bad beat right there.
You guys have forgotten what type of arm talent and player Card was or is. I mean, you'll see it. He will remind the nation, or at least the Texas fans, this year at Purdue. You just stay tuned.
El Presidente, if you're a betting guy,
oh yeah. If
you had to bet on who would have a better season in 2023, are you gonna go Casey Thompson at FAU, or are you gonna go Hudson Card at Purdue?
Casey Thompson at FAU, 100%.
I want that action.
Yeah, I'll give you some of that action too, because I tell you what, you
guys don't make an Alex Dunlap, Jason Stinkamel bet on the show tonight. Do not do that.
You and I still 5 years later, Catch. We still can't figure out if we're going to get a lunch.
We will pay off our bets.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. We'll pay off our bets.
But no, I'm 100%. Casey Thompson. What he did in that Alamo Bowl. He didn't start game 1, but Amar, you were up there that night in Fayetteville. As say was I. When he came in the game, we weren't going to win that game, but you saw the uptick in the offense. We did play a little bit better, and then he got hot until that injury in the Cotton Bowl. And my what if he didn't get hurt in the Cotton Bowl? What if Jaron Thompson makes that 4th and 1 stop, versus Caleb Williams on that quarterback keeper that he goes for 63 yards for a touchdown? Texas is up huge. Then those are my 2 what ifs, because we're not talking about a 5-7 season then, and we're talking about a lot better season if he doesn't hurt his hand the way he did.
That's my take. Can we say that knowing how badly he plays in Nebraska? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't. First of all, I can't answer Anwar the Hudson Card question. I don't know. Like, I believe what Tom says about all of the talent is there. And I would say this, nobody would have thought Chris Sims would have been a draft pick coming out of his junior season. And sometimes the light switch comes on, and I don't know. I don't know what to completely think of Hudson Card. I think the ability is inside of him. Is he a dog? I don't know. And I think Casey will be okay at Florida Atlantic, but he was awful last season. It was hard. It was pretty painful watching him play at Nebraska. I thought he would be better. That was not a team completely void of talent around him. And God, they were ugly. They were bad.
Yeah, they were awful. They had nobody in the trenches. You would a blue blood program like them. They were just awful. But yes, Tom G, I'll take you on that $500 action that I saw you put in there.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on.
You heard it here.
There's two things that if you're gonna do
liquor.
If you guys, hold on. If you guys are gonna do it to bet on my show, there's two things that gotta happen. One, we're gonna set up parameters. Two, Catch and I have to benefit off of it somehow, some way. Okay,
we'll take care of you.
No. So there's two things. So let's clearly set up the parameters, and let's clearly set up how Catch and I benefit. All right. So that's it, because Catch and I have been waiting on this Alex Dunlap, Jason bet, and we still don't know what the hell we're going to get. So I want to be next. If there's a bet tonight, what are we saying is who's better than who? What are the parameters? How do Catch and I benefit? That's it.
All right. So let me put some stuff out there. All right. So first of all, how you benefit Anwar, since Jeff's already here, next time you come into Houston, steak dinner on me there. That's how you benefit. Any place you want.
Do we get drinks or no?
Yeah, no, the whole meal, the whole thing.
Well, I'm just asking. The shit matters. Shit matters. You know what I'm saying?
It will determine how quickly Anwar comes to Houston.
The full meal. All right.
Because if it's just a steak and I can't get a drink, old fashioned, I don't know what the fuck I'm here for.
Full meal deal. You get it all.
All right.
Now, as far as I'm okay with this. So Eric, you speak up. I think I don't want to go by QBR or anything like that because it's just I don't like those kind of stats. I would rather say, between yourself and Jeff, you guys with your eyeballs will see both players.
Yep.
You choose who you think had the better season.
If it becomes a tie, we're going to put a poll up and let if Anwar and I cannot decide,
and let the audience decide.
We will put it for the audience as a tiebreaker. That way, there will be a winner.
I'm good with all of that. Just Tom G, when you come to Arlington for the Big 12 championship, I like Benjamins, please. That's what I like.
Okay. So here's the question, though.
You're so full of shit.
Casey, and I've been Team Casey. Casey has not shown an ability to stay healthy.
Correct.
And in his career, he has not stayed healthy. So El Presidente, again, to eliminate all excuses here, if Casey plays in 3 games and he goes down and doesn't play for the rest of the season and he just worries about looking pretty, then what?
I lost.
All right.
Unless he plays pretty good in those 3 games, gets hurt, and then Hudson has a 12-game season and looks bang average. There's a world out there where El Presidente wins that bet if Casey Thompson plays 3 games. But the math suggests that would be an L, but I wouldn't. Let's put that one at 85%.
I don't think Tom Herman goes and gets Casey Thompson if he's not going to be the starter and not going to be, has a little faith in him. I think we're going to see some good stuff.
He's going to do that, but El Presidente, again, as a Casey guy, and Catch, I'm going to cut to you for my last question. As a Casey guy, I can tell you my man is fragile. I'm just going to put this out there. I like Casey, but I don't know if Casey's been healthy for an entire season ever. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Herman likes to run his quarterbacks.
All right. Okay. Jeff, last question. And this is a very recent one, but this is a really good one. And it is off topic of football. So which I like this I like this the most. Should Chris Beard have been let go? And the second part of that question is and you could do 1A and 1B. So 1A is did Texas should Chris Beard have been let go? 1A. 1B is should Texas have explored more options before hiring Rodney Terry? 1A and 1B.
Chris Beard should have been fired. You can't keep a guy around when the belief behind the scenes is that he did something to his old lady. Doesn't mean he did. I can't definitively say I wasn't there, but they believe something happened, and they know we lied because we still haven't seen this footage that old Chris Beard told the police had that would exonerate him. So he has to go. Can't be the University of Texas and have a coach that you think put his hands on a woman. You can't come back from that. And I'm a guy that I probably can let a lot of things go. That's one of them I can't. Yeah, they shouldn't have hired Rodney Terry. He is not an elite head coach. If you look at the coaches that Texas has hired in every sport, you look at softball. They go out and get Mike White. I shouldn't say every sport because there are some sports that I'm not convinced that they've hired A+ coaches, but in a lot of them they have. Look at women's basketball. I mean, in women's basketball, every time they hire, 2 out of 3 times that they've hired a coach, they've swung for A+ hires. I think that's what you have to make. I know they're really difficult. I didn't say it would be easy, but by God, you're at the University of Texas. Whip it out, put it on the table, scare everybody, put your money on the table and make somebody say no. And I wonder if they were afraid of being told no and it getting out. And I wonder if they were worried about being embarrassed. I understand the hire. Even by the end of the season, I fall into the category of, I guess you have to hire him. He went to the Elite Eight. A couple of months later, though, that high is gone. And from 30,000 feet up, it looks like they've got a guy who might be okay, but nobody really believes that Rodney Terry's going to win championships at Texas. That is what they hired Chris Beard to do. It feels like with Rodney Terry right now that they have a head coach that they hope is going to be pretty good, but they don't even know. They don't know with a capital K. They hope with a capital H.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there any part of you that says, and someone put that up there, and it said to proven guilty, so you know what? Just suspend him. Because at the end of the day, what we thought and knew, Catch, you and I for sure, was going to happen is the whole thing kind of goes away. And at the end of the day, it's almost like Texas is kind of, they made this reaction and now they're stuck with Rodney. But maybe if they hold on to it, I'm just throwing this at you. They hold on to the 5 stars that they had. They hold on to other guys to get guys to the transfer portal. It's a kind of somewhat because this catch you're on Orange Bloods, man. You see the debate on our board by people who say we should not have, and I say we, as I'm speaking as an Orange Bloods person, they say we should not have done this. This should not have happened. Look where we're at now. If we had just waited another couple of months, this whole thing goes away. Chris Beard's exonerated. We're good to go. Like,
is Chris Beard exonerated? Like, really? Do you remember that press conference? Ole Miss looks like trash right now. The way they rolled him out He's never truly answered any questions. If he stays at Texas, Chris Beard's got to meet the media. He has never met the Texas media to take a question on any of this. And he didn't take a question from Ole Miss. Like, he wouldn't take that question on even today at Ole Miss. If he stays at Texas, they cannot keep him without him addressing it. He has to address the media. He has to take questions. He's not capable of passing that test. He is incapable of sitting in front of the media and answering questions, and I think sounding like an innocent man.
Hold on, El Presidente. Don't say anything. Tom G, I see your thinking. I see the hamster wheel going. I don't think you agree with Catch, but you let me know.
I 100% agree with Catch.
Okay.
Ain't no way in hell could Beard be let stay on as a Texas coach. And I am convinced that Texas overreacted because they felt they, I guess, had to appease somebody and hiring Terry. I think they should have put it out there and done a real search and put real work into it and made some of the top coaches say no. I think they got caught up in the emotion of the Elite Eight run, and it just, I don't know. I was extremely disappointed in how all this was handled post Beard, but I absolutely believe Beard. There ain't no way in hell Beard could stay on, and nor do I believe he deserved to stay on.
El Presidente, I'm asking you now because you're tied in. You know, you were a Holland guy. You know the family, right? You had Mom on our show. Like, you brought Catch. You weren't on this before, but El Presidente had Ron Holland's mom in our comments, commenting on everything. Like, so we thought everything was good with Rodney Terry.
She did a Monday Overreaction show.
Yes. So and that's because of El Presidente and his relationship with her, right? He brought her into the fold. So El Presidente, I've got to act now at you. And it's been and El Presidente, by the way, there have been some people who have asked on multiple weeks, El Presidente, you need to explain yourself. So, all right, I balls in your court.
You know, they had Catches right, Tom G's right. Texas did the right thing on letting him go. That there was no way there. You couldn't save that. You couldn't. There was no saving grace from that. And at the end of the day, Texas had to make a business decision. It was the best business decision because every arena he walked into in the Big 12, they would have had a poster of him in his Travis County jumpsuit, and it would have been national media every day. And the school was not going to take that look. So I agree. Texas made the right decision. If Mississippi, hey, he got a second chance. Good luck to him. He came out in his press conference and said he didn't, him and I think her name was Terry, you know, they agreed not to speak on it. They are no longer together. He brought both of his girls. You know, I hope he learned his lesson, and that's it. As far as Coach Terry, I thought it was the right hire. I don't think. Do we all agree Chris Delaconte is one of the top 5 athletic directors in the nation? Do we agree with that?
I need to see the list.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I would think he's one of the top athletic directors in the nation, and I don't think he didn't do. You know, I get what y'all are saying about the Terry hire, but I don't think he didn't check with a couple of people behind the scenes. Hey, is this a job that you would be interested in? You know, I guarantee he vented some people and then circled back to the Rodney Terry hire. Blake and I were talking about this the other day with Holland. I think Holland looked at the roster. We had a bunch of pieces either declare for the NBA draft or transfer. And for Holland, I think he he's going to make a business decision, and he thought his business decision was not to play with this squad that Texas is assembling, because we did lose a lot of pieces after the season. I don't think that's Terry's fault. One went to the other 5-star went to the G League. Ron was looking in the G League this week. I ultimately think he's going to end up at Arkansas. And talking to Miss Holland, she's not going to fight this battle with her son. I think she wanted him at Texas as well. But she had that battle with her daughter a couple years back about her daughter's volleyball career, and she wasn't going to fight for that either. They got into it about where the daughter was going and things like that. And then 1 year later, the daughter's already home. So I think she took a step back, and ultimately he's an 18-year-old kid, and he made that choice. But I think he's looking at the roster situation. Blake and I both agree it's a good damn roster that I think Terry's put together. But he's going to probably end up at Arkansas if I had to guess, because he thinks that's the better option.
El Presidente, no, but hold on a second. If Chris Beard is still the coach here, do you think that thought process is ahead, or decisions at the end of the day you go, well, Chris Beard isn't here. Rodney's, he cool and all, but I'm going to go somewhere else. It seems more of an indictment on Rodney Terry than it is some sort of pass when it's all said at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on.
I want to give Rodney the benefit of the doubt. There's some things I do know, not allowed to talk about really, but I think at the end of the day, he's making a business decision, and his business decision, he thought that out. I think he was looking at that roster, and I don't think he wanted to play on that roster. That's my opinion.
Catch. It would be like if you were not at Orange Bloods and Jason took over, and then I was like, yeah, I quit. And then they'd be like, well, I guess he made a business decision. It'd be like, no, I was committed to catch. And then Jason took over, and I was like, nah, I'm good.
Here's yes, Anwar. Here's my thing. It was athletic director malpractice to allow yourself to have your decision on the second most important program on campus be defined by whatever happens at the end of the season. What an athletic director with a brain who fully thinks out what's my best chess move instead of what is the most popular thing that I can do. Chris Del Conte, very early, the day that Chris Beard is fired, Chris Del Conte needed to say defiantly, we will not comment on the head coaching position. What we will do when the season is over, no matter what happens, we are going to interview candidates. We are going to evaluate our options. We are going to hire the single best hire that we can make. But I'm not going to talk about the coaching job and what we're going to do until the season is over. Mm-hmm. But we will not make a hire until I interview a decent handful of candidates so that I, the decision maker, can make the best possible decision for the long-term future of the Texas basketball program. My personal opinion is that Chris Del Conte doesn't play chess, apparently. He's not Machiavellian, which is kind of what I want from my athletic director, because boy, when you're dealing with agents, they're pretty Machiavellian. He needed to establish control of that situation from minute one, second one, that it lingered in the air like a bad fart and nobody knew. What are they going to do? Or they in not being the alpha with a diabolical brain, he let the program get into a position where week to week, because nothing had been outlined as to how this thing would even go down, we week to week are like talking about, yes on Terry, no on Terry, what's good enough? If he does this, does that change anything? Why? Because Chris Del Conte never outlined like how the process would even work, which that allowed the process to get out of his control. And then the conversation going into the tournament is like, well, if he wins a game, he's out. If he wins 2 games, that's probably enough. If he wins 3 games, it's his job. Even then, Del Conte didn't come out and go, guys, we don't make emotional decisions around here. So even like 2 months later, on the eve of the Big 12 tournament, the NCAA tournament, he could have said, the smartest thing that we can possibly do. We owe it to our fans. We owe it to our alums. We owe it to our players. We owe it to the students. I owe it to my bosses. I have to do a full search, find out what is readily available. What can we do? We have a new arena that needs to be full every night. We're going into the SEC in a year. This job, anybody can coach it, and if they got any recruiting chops at all, they can rebring it. This state is loaded. It's loaded. It's arguably now a better basketball talent state than a football talent state. You're telling me that with all of the money that Texas has, with a brand new arena that everybody agrees is one of the best basketball arenas now in the country, the atmosphere is fantastic, the recruiting is fantastic, you're going into the SEC, it's as peach of a job as almost any job can be that's not Kentucky, Duke, Carolina, Kansas. There's like five or six jobs that are, those are the true bluest of the blue bloods. Outside of that, Texas is as good as any job in the country. If the answer is that Texas couldn't find a better option than Rodney Terry as the head coach after a full evaluation process and talking to agents and who's truly available and who might we make a run at and like really working that thing out instead of being lazy, it's a massive indictment on Texas. If they've got all of these things going for them and they have to settle. And they did. They settled. They settled for a coach who has no proven track record as a major Division I head coach at this level in terms of building a program, in terms of day in and day out. He's proven that if a program's already built and he takes over mid-season, he can do a good job. That's not the job. And I think it's a massive failure in terms of big boy leadership in the Texas athletic director position. And there's nobody that can tell me that I'm wrong. I mean, I'm sure there are people who think I'm wrong, but it was a horrific fumbling of leadership. And that people think I'm stupid, Anwar. There are people out there that think I can't trust what Ketch says. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Fair enough. But you know what? I have a big enough brain with like a 20 IQ of being able to figure out how that should have unfolded. Just talking about it, like talking it out. This is what you do. They had months to think about it. And at no point did they ever figure out, we're losing leverage here. It's bad for us if we find ourselves put into a corner like Baby and Dirty Dancing with no Patrick Swayze to come in and pull her out of the corner.
I also think, Ketch, that the media pressure was building on them significantly because every game you would hear Vitale or somebody saying, "What the hell is Texas doing? Why haven't they made this decision yet?" And I think that had a role to play also.
Del Conte gets out there early, and you know what? Chris Del Conte calls Dick Vitale and says, "Don't fucking embarrass me on national television tonight, or the North will remember."
Yeah, but I mean, all the talking heads that were covering Texas, by the time we got to the Big 12 tournament, that's all that they would be talking about.
I didn't even know Texas had an athletic director for the first 3 months of this calendar year.
Wow. Catch, do you think Catch, do you think players and recruits did Rodney Terry a solid and just said, you know what, we're gonna go along with this because he's a cool dude or whatever? They're like, we're gonna do him a solid, and then when he got the job, everyone's like, yeah, I'm good.
The 18-year-olds have outsmarted the adults. Of course. And when it's all said and done, the 18-year-old college kids outsmarted the adult decision makers. That's embarrassing. It's not Rodney Terry's fault. Whatever happens from here, it's not his fault. He did not hire himself.
All right, let's get to the super chat, and then we'll just wrap this thing up because nobody's going for a while. But Michael, my business says, kind of like when Luke Walton took over for Kerr for a bit, Catch, didn't mean he shouldn't have been the next Lakers coach. Is that a fair comparison in your mind, Catch?
It kind of is, actually. That's a great metaphor, Michael. A great metaphor, because Luke Walton, I mean, yes.
Gosh, yeah, it's crazy to think that Luke Walton was a coach at one point, Catch. Because Magic was a coach.
And there were people who were like, he should get the job. He's the rising star.
Yeah.
They need to stick with him. That happened.
You know, the interesting thing, Catch, is, you know, what'll be interesting going forward is that in your Del Conte conversation, there will be and maybe he doesn't get as much of for the Steve Sarkisian portion, but he will be tied to him, even if it wasn't his final decision, right? And then of course there will be the basketball thing as well. That's tied to him, and people are going to be looking going forward. And look, Catch, at some point, people will start looking around, and if these things don't work out the way that they hope for, I mean, there's certain guys that aren't going to fire themselves. So, you know,
everybody behind the scenes knows that Sark wasn't hired by Del Conte, that was an L-type move. So I don't think if Sark doesn't work out, like, I think, you know, Conte's going to get credit nationally for Sark if he succeeds. If he fails, the decision makers know how that happened. I mean, you and I know that there were multiple press releases the week of the support for Tom Herman, right? That notice of, we know that thing was held up for days.
Yeah.
It was held up for days because the real decision makers were looking at that and they were like, you are not going to read that out loud. You are not putting that statement out because Tom Herman actually is not safe. So, no. They watered it down. And they were like, there it is. Now you can release it. It's vague. And so I think Del Conte has more wiggle room and area for error because Beard's not his fault. Beard was a phenomenal hire, and Del Conte gets credit for making that. It's not Del Conte. I mean, maybe you can say he should have known better. He should have known that Chris Beard has a thing, and maybe he should have done some work. Look, that dude, coaches don't do what he did, allegedly, that whole him in jail. That shit doesn't happen. That does not it's never happened. So I can't get mad at Del Conte for almost like an act of God. It was almost like an uncontrollable situation he couldn't control. So I think he's such a good fundraiser, and I don't think he's got a football coach that the people who would fire him will blame him for. What may happen is if Sark doesn't work out, Del Conte is a shrewd enough guy. Hey, there was a reason why that whole thing got out last year before the TCU game.
The Sonny Dykes thing.
Yeah. We know who reported that. We know where that came from. And to me, that was the first sign of, okay, we're seeing some Machiavellian movement behind the scenes of potential separation if needed, which is why I can't understand what happened with the basketball deal. Chris Del Conte is a shrewd guy. That maneuvering before the TCU game was proof that he has it in him to move his pawns and rooks around on the chessboard. He knows how to do that. It didn't happen in the basketball job. I'm not saying he's not a good athletic director. He's an excellent athletic director. He's a world-class fundraiser. He botched the basketball thing. And I think you got to be able to say he botched this, but generally speaking, he's very good.
I mean, like, what's funny at the end of the day, Catch, is that when it's all said and done, what's that cup? Was it the President's Cup or something like that?
Cup.
What is it? Director's Cup?
Yeah.
He's probably going to win another one.
And it's a huge. I think that's a big deal. It's a feather in his cap. It supports my statement of, generally speaking, he's an excellent athletic director. It doesn't mean he didn't seriously mishandle the basketball thing. I don't expect that he'll ever make that mistake again. I do think Chris Del Conte is the kind of guy that I don't think he likes to make mistakes. And I think making one, he'll never repeat that mistake again. He knows what happened. He knows that he lost control of that situation. And you know what? The first time, I'm stunned. Because look, onward. Verify this.
Got you.
Del Conte knows everybody.
Yes.
It's
sure.
mind-blowing how many relationships he has.
Yeah.
He knows everybody. The first time Dick Vitale went out and did that, gotta give him a job, baby. Hook 'em horns, Rodney Terry, blah, 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 blah. He should have called him up and been like, Dick, you're making me look bad and you're putting me in a tough spot. And I am as pro Rodney Terry as it gets, but you're putting me, who's your host when you come into town? I'm your guy. Think about what you're doing to me when you do that. And Dick Vitale doesn't do that again. Why? Because everybody really likes Chris Del Conte. All Del Conte needed to do was take control. And none of this is rocket science. It's people. It's situation control. Again, he's an excellent athletic director. But wow, that happened. Because again, I'm figuring this stuff out on the fly in conversation. If I can do this at 10:34 at night, just freestyling, it's not rocket science.
I'll say this, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. That I will say this, it catches that there is one thing about Del Conte. He doesn't like controversial, adversarial kind of like big scale things, right? And we saw this in the eyes, and I'm not going to go back there and rehash it, but that's not where he's at. Like, I think for the most part, he likes to be the person who's liked. He likes to be the person that is kind of like the life of the party. Like, he likes to be the person that comes around, like we know, Catch, shit's going on. We're not seeing a newsletter from Del Conte, right? Like you and I have been there and been like, we haven't seen one. It's been 2 months. It's been 3 months. It's been a while since he's put out one of those things. You know, when things are getting like that, we know he's like, nah, I don't want no parts of that. Now, when things are going good, he's life of the party. He's a guy that you come, hey, pour the drinks, tell the stories, this and that. But if it's got to get crazy, he's like, man, I'm out. So there is that thing where if it's getting kind of crazy like that, I get your point, Catch, where you're saying, call up Dickie V, this and that. I don't know if he wants that kind of adversarial thing. Like, I think he'll do it locally. I don't think he'll do it nationally. And I think that becomes kind of a big difference.
Hey, real quick. QWERTY's like such a hater. QWERTY, you're not wrong. But you know what? I ain't wrong either. I might be a hater to a certain extent, but what you can't say is that I'm wrong about what we're talking about. You might not like it. You might be thinking this isn't good for y'all to talk about out loud, and like there are people watching, and like this doesn't benefit. Hey, it's the Drunk Uncle podcast.
Hey,
if I'm coming on at night and we're gonna talk, like y'all need to know that we're gonna talk about things, and like we are never going to sugarcoat things for the sport of sugarcoating. And if you can't live with me saying he's excellent at 90% of his job, but he mishandled a situation, if you can't allow for that, you're watching the wrong shows. Just point blank.
It was fight night, revisiting the greatest Longhorn football debates, and we did the basketball one, and it was awesome. It was everything that I thought it would be, and that's one I had to have my crew on tonight. Tom G, just give me some final thoughts. I'll go to El Presidente and I'll go to Catch, but give me, as we start to wrap this thing up, give me some of your final thoughts here, Tom G.
Yeah, Omar, some final thoughts. Definitely opened us with some old wounds tonight. But I agree with Catch. You got to keep it real. You can't sugarcoat it. With all that said, you know, I'm still excited for what we've got going in football. Baseball today was very, very disappointing. I'll be up at 9 a.m. to watch it tomorrow morning, so that sucked. I have faith. Texas is going to give Rodney Terry every opportunity to be successful. He's put together a decent roster. I'm not going to say it, it's the best roster in the Big 12, but it's got some nice pieces to it. So, I'm hopeful that, they can get a good little thing going there. With the upcoming season though, I can't wait to take El Presidente's $500.
I mean, you know what, Omar? Let me finish this off, and you can go to Catch real quick.
Go for it. We just sit back, Catch and I just chill out.
Yeah,
Catch and I are getting a steak dinner from somebody.
Yeah,
so we're good.
It's good talking points here late in May. We've got a bet on the table. We had a good discussion tonight, and then you got the drunk cousin in the corner. It's always just chatting away, throwing his spitballs, and that's Tom G. He's that drunk cousin that's always just trying to stir up things. But we'll leave him alone at that. As far as the future is concerned, you know what? I know there's some doubt with our head coach. Is he the right guy? There is some doubt with the basketball coach. Did we settle instead of do a national search? You know what? In time will tell. Time will tell with all. I've been on record, and I say this is Steve Sarkisian's year. This is the year to break the 8-5 and 9-4 myth, and it's all on him, because after this year, you don't break that myth, you're going to have a lot of eyes looking at you, going back to the comments that y'all were saying earlier in that TCU game earlier this year. As far as Rodney Terry is concerned, I think he's built the second best roster right now in the Big 12 going into next year behind Kansas. I think Kansas is just on a great run right now of transfer portal guys that they've gotten. Paper-wise, I think they're number 2 right now. I could be wrong. They could come out and really stink it up next year, and then we're really going to come back and circle back to this debate. But you know what? I love the underdog story. That's why I'm going Casey Thompson. I could have taken, Tom G's horse, but, Tom G always bets on that favorite, and his arch favorite is not working out well for him right now because we all know who the number 2 quarterback this year is going to be. So with that being said, I will spend Tom G's money in Arlington, Texas on December 3rd for the Big 12 championship. And Catch, Anwar, we will go to Del Frisco's that on Tom G.
Hey. Catch ain't mad at that.
I just got to get Catch out of Houston. That's an easy $95 flight.
Easier.
Del Frisco's is okay.
Look at me. Food talks.
Yeah.
Anwar, can I have a baby parting shot?
Yes.
Rest in peace to one of the all-time GOATs, Tina Turner.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it's 2023. We're so far removed from what feels like when she just was Beyonce before. I mean, she's just an icon, and no woman, well, maybe actually the woman, Angela Bassett, that played her in the movie, has ever been such a baddie in her 60s and 70s. Like Tina Turner was. I used to do radio with Chad Hastings, and Chad was like, look, she is in my top 5 forever. Like as a hall pass. And even when she was like in her mid 60s, Chad was like, she ain't coming out of my top 5. I'll make her see sunshine. He was so look, she's just incredible. If you've never seen the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, it's been a while now. So like there could legitimately be a lot of people who've never seen this movie from, I think the 90s is when that came out. Do yourself a favor. Educate yourself a little bit on Tina Turner. Watch that movie. It's a fantastic movie. What a story. You think about when she started in the 60s, all the way through the Ike days, the What's Love Got to Do with It days in the 80s. That's when I really learned about Tina Turner. I was 8 years old, and it was like, oh, women can look like that? I think I like women. Like Tina was part of the education process in terms of what was I going to do and like as an adult male. And as a performer, there are other great performers. There ain't never been a better performer, certainly on the women's side. She is Michael Jackson of women. I mean, to watch her perform was to go through like a religious experience, watching her dance, watching her sing, watching the whole package. There ain't ever been a Tina Turner since Tina Turner, and rest in peace. She will not be forgotten. She's one of the all-time greats.
Catch, I can't wait, and I hope on Sunday you do a top 10 Tina Turner songs.
You know it.
And, because I'm curious because I don't know if you're going to have Rolling on the River as one or What's Love Got to Do with It at one. Like there are a lot of good songs to choose from. So your top 10 Tina songs, I'll be hitting refresh on Sunday night.
It's coming. To
see what you're doing.
If Private Dancer isn't top 5, I'm never going to read the 10 things for Sunday.
Wait, what did you say?
Private Dancer.
Okay.
He says Private Dancer. He says Private Dancer's not in top 5. He's never reading it again.
Off the top of my head, it might be borderline. I mean, it is not like she doesn't have a catalog of songs that will be difficult. Maybe some songs not in the top 10 that people were going to get pissed at me, and I'm going to be like, I can't put 19 songs into 10. It just can't happen.
So, Catch, there's a couple as I wrap up. There's a couple of topics we didn't have a chance to get into, right? The easiest Longhorn debate was beans or no beans. Didn't have a chance to get into that, but I felt like I knew where that would be headed. Another one was the alternate Longhorn uniforms, which seems to be a young person versus old person thing, but that comes up every year. Is the alternate uniforms, and then the Greg Davis good coach or bad coach debate. Those things alone we could have done another 30 to 45 minutes on. And Blake goes, I've been missing if Shaka Smart's a damn good coach, which Blake, you shouldn't do that before payday. I'm just going to be honest with you. I would.
That National Coach of the Year award this year indicates something.
Yeah, Shaka's a good coach.
So there was some more. So if you do Tina, that'd be great. It's summertime. If you touched in on some of these great Longhorn debates as well, I would think that would be kind of awesome as well. If you want to feel like fighting for 4 days straight, or you might want peace. And if you do want peace next week, heading into Memorial Day weekend, I can respect that as well.
I just want to get through it, Yeah.
So
honestly, Barry Emmett wore my ass out the last 3 days. Because you know me, man, I can't let a single comment go. So I was like in it with 100 people at least. I'm good.
Yeah, no, I think this Memorial Day weekend you should do it, and it just do Tina. Let that be it. That would be the only war you have. I wouldn't do anything else. But I did say this on the podcast, and this has been my parting shot. I'm going to say it again. Props to all the teachers. Congratulations on a great school year. We appreciate you. You guys do a lot for us. Catch and I with young kids. We absolutely appreciate you. Like we are not looking forward to this summer of looking at our kids every single day. And by August, we are ready to just push our kids out the car on that pickup line or drive-through line. Like we don't want to see them anymore. But we understand you guys need a break, because if we want to break from them, then damn it, I know you guys want to break from them after dealing with them for 9 straight months. So thank you to all the teachers out there. We absolutely appreciate everything we did. Go ahead, do all your drinks, get drunk, go travel this entire summer. Don't worry about our kids. We'll have to deal with them for the next few months, but we will see your ass in the middle of August, guaranteed. Like when we get that first thing about a parent-teacher night, it'll be everybody will be in attendance, because we cannot wait to get rid of our kids. So enjoy your summer. You teachers do a fantastic job. You don't very little pay, very little gratitude, but we absolutely appreciate everything. Catch, you appreciate the teachers, right? I'm not speaking out of turn, am I?
No, man, you couldn't. Facts.
So we appreciate everything you do. So thank you guys for tuning in. For my man Tom G, for my man El Presidente, for my main man Jeff Ketchum, who I love so much, and of course Blake, who's producing behind the scenes, who does everything. We love you. We appreciate you. Remember what Drunk always says: live each day like it was your last, because one day it will be, and we will see you soon. You guys take care.